So basically, whenever you place a down payment to purchase a property in Dubai, whether you're buying through a broker from the secondary market or you're buying directly from the developer, your down payment should be always refundable until the point where you sign an agreement or a sales and purchase agreement or a contract, a binding contract that states clearly that this down payment is non-refundable. So to sum it up, you have basically two scenarios. One, when you buy from the secondary market, you go to a broker and the broker will connect you to a landlord from the secondary market. And in this case, you sign what they call Form F, which is a sales and purchase agreement between the landlord, the seller and the buyer. And this format is provided from RERA, Dubai Land Department. And the vast majority of these contracts states that the buyer will have to place 10% security deposit, and the seller will place similarly a 10% security deposit. If any of the parties decide to withdraw, so let's say the buyer decides to withdraw from the agreement, and the agreement is mutually signed by both parties, then the seller will have the right to claim the 10% of the buyer and to forfeit that 10%. And of course, he will get his 10% security deposit back. Similarly, if the seller decides to withdraw from the transaction. So as I said, in the secondary market, every buyer and seller have to sign on a Form F, Contract F, which is by Dubai Land Department. And mostly all contracts will have an addendum that details more the relationship and the mutual understanding and agreement between both parties. Now, if you're a seller or the buyer, like I said, both will place a security deposit of 10%, and then I'm referring to clause 220 and 221 here, where basically it states that if the seller withdraw from the agreement, they will have to lose their deposit, and the deposit basically will be split between the buyer. The security deposit will be forfeited by the buyer as well as the broker, so each one gets his right as a result of the default of the seller. And the other way, when it comes to the buyer, if the buyer withdraws from the agreement, he also will lose the security deposit, where the broker and the seller will split the security deposit, so everyone paid against his efforts. Now, in addition to this, there's a very, very important clause, I think, and it serves both the buyer and the seller, which is clause number 9. So in the event you have a mortgage buyer, the mortgage buyer has to ensure that the contract is subject to obtaining the finance. So in case the finance was not approved by the bank, by the buyer's bank, the buyer will not lose his security deposit. So the seller cannot forfeit anything against the buyer, from the buyer. Similarly, the seller will not lose because it's not in the best interest of either party to go into legal dispute. And the seller will also protect his interest in this clause because it states that the buyer has certain number of days to either confirm or withdraw based on his bank approval. And it also states that the buyer has to provide evidence to the seller if the reason of withdrawing is the bank finance or is not obtaining the mortgage. So when you buy from a developer, it works slightly different. You still place a down payment that could be a percentage of the purchase price, and you sign a booking form or a reservation agreement. Different developers have different names for this agreement, which will be superseded by the SPA later on. So once the booking form is signed by both parties and the down payment is placed, then you will receive your SPA, which is the final binding agreement between the buyer and the developer. Now, once the booking form is signed, most booking forms states that the down payment is non-refundable. However, I'm not a lawyer, of course, but some of the lawyers I met, they said that if the buyer for any reason was not happy with the conditions of the SPA, he can still go and raise a civil case against the developer, and he will have chances to actually win or refund part of the down payment, because the developer should have the right to keep only what is proven to be as damages as a result of the buyer backing out from the deal. Needless to say, if you want to seek more legal information on this subject, you have to refer to a lawyer and seek a lawyer's advice.